worth it, you know. There's nothing down there for you to do. It's all being taken care of quite adequately by professionals. And if you're just going down to sightsee, you deserve anything you get. And you might get it, too. The American Legion still needs a few items. Washettes, for instance, to wash and dry. This has become quite a problem in that with all the youngsters, diapers and so on, these things have to be taken care of immediately. And they need washettes. So if you have anything of that nature, please get in touch with them. That's the Jack Henry Post number 1 on Fireweed Lane. Small kettles also for warming baby bottles. Anything that has to do with Easter. The youngsters can certainly be occupied with Easter eggs and so on. I believe they're even scheduling an Easter egg hunt over there at the American Legion today. Terrific. Soft drinks are needed. I might also pass along information, and I would like confirmation on this, if I could, from the bottlers of Anchorage. Anyone listening who is with either Anchorage Cold Storage or any of the other bottlers in the area. I understand that soft drinks in many forms are going to be distributed to the various grocery chains in Anchorage today at reduced prices, and that people will be able to buy them because of the problem with the water. If we could get confirmation on this, we would like to call KFQD, Fairfax 22401, 10, isn't it? Excuse me, 10, or 22411. Cold cuts for sandwiches. Here it is lunchtime, and they still need cold cuts. They need bread, soup, canned milk, and I might also suggest that if you have a case or many cases of formula, baby's formula, would you get in touch with these people? They need coffee also, and tea might also be appropriate. They also need syrup. That's all at the American Legion Post, Jack Henry Post number 1 on Fireweed Lane. These needs, remember, are being felt elsewhere in the city today. So if you would rather, if you have a particular church that you know is taking care of people and they have small children there, or another organization where people are being housed and there are youngsters, you can fill the needs there just as well as you can at the American Legion. We just have this request from them, and so we're passing it along to you. FAA duty officer requests Neil Alliker to report to Merrill Field for duty immediately. Sightseers, as I mentioned before, are hampering efforts downtown. This is an urgent message from Civil Defense. They say get out of the downtown area, and they mark this strong, they emphasize it. I don't know what we'd have to do to emphasize it any greater than what we have. It's reached the point where sometimes conversation simply is not adequate, and they have to take other measures, and they are really prepared to do it. We have some names here. What is this? I can't read it too well. Would you decipher that and then let us know what it is? Distribution clerks are asked to report to the airport annex as soon as possible. They want to get the mail out. And do not go near the Providence Hospital unless it's an emergency. You could create a very serious accident. Ambulances are traveling to and from the Providence Hospital. Not all of them, of course, don't misunderstand, not all of them are in the process of carrying injured, but they are carrying medical supplies, and someone could be killed in an auto accident.
Ada and Swen Schulderberg, who live in Beulah Vista subdivision, should contact Keith Arnold in Juneau. Also, Harold or Shirley Young, or both, should contact their Uncle Greg Mangan in Juneau.
You do well deciphering those. That's very nice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I understand your language, too. There's a man that's been on the air now for several hours, haven't you, Alan?
A little bit. Captain Greg Mangan of
What
the
did you do right after you shaved today?
I threw away the blade. It didn't do a bit of good.
I noticed.
You're looking very well, too. Another hour or two and we'll be known as the Smith Brothers. The mustache should be here very shortly. We've got the beards and the mustache will be here soon. Captain Greg Mangan of the Division of Maritime Transportation said in Juneau today that the scheduled trip of the Malaspina from Juneau to Sitka tonight may be canceled. The Coast Guard has reported that all buoys between Juneau and Sitka have been knocked off their original placing or have been swept away in the tidal action of Friday night. Mangan said that he would announce final decision by 8 o'clock tonight.
Good. They're also working on the port to determine whether or not they're taking soundings out there to determine whether or not the bottom has changed so that they can bring in the Tonsina, isn't it? Yeah.
It's due in a couple of days.
Right,
There's
Tuesday.
a story on Robert Odlund, if you want to...
Good, thank you. City manager Robert Oldham came to Anchorage in September of 1962 because, as he put it, my wife and I felt the challenge was something we wouldn't find elsewhere. But he didn't expect that challenge to include the rebuilding of an earthquake-smashed city, which is understandable. The city manager and his family came through the trembler unhurt. Their home suffered mild structural damage. He made this comment: I was sitting in my living room when it hit. The first thing I did was to grab for the baby, Cynthia, who's 3 years old, and we all, including his wife Shirley and their son Brent, who's 10, and got on the floor with the baby, and he put the baby under him, to protect her. 2 big end tables and the lamps fell over, and part of the fireplace stone fell down, but nothing hit them, which was quite fortunate. Elsewhere on the Olden property, portions of wall, roof, and sidewalk cracked, but power was restored within 24 hours to their home in eastern Anchorage. Olden said that he made sure that his family was okay. Then he came down to Civil Defense Headquarters and he went to work. We'll continue with that in a moment. Right now I have this message. The Chugach Electric has one phone line for trouble calls. Now, if there is no power in the area where these people may be, is that the idea? Anyone who has no power now is requested to phone this number?
That's right, and they will see what they can do about it.
Okay. So if you have no power at this time, call the Chugach Electric. They have one line for trouble calls. Obviously, if there are many people without power, you're going to get the busy signal quite a few times, but you can keep on trying at various times during the day. Here is the number. Broadway 50005. Now that's simple. Broadway 50005. And also a reminder to be very conservative about the use of your power. If there's an appliance of any sort in your home or wherever you may be that isn't vital to the operation of your existence today, shut it off, please. Turn it right off. Any lights that are burning at the present time in your home that are not needed. And you and I both know that you can get by with a great deal less light than we normally do. One light burning in a house is adequate today. It's not very dark out. We have some fog, but there's plenty of light. So turn all lights off. Turn all appliances off. If you have an electric range, make sure that the burners are off. Only use these appliances when it's absolutely necessary. And the reason for this isn't that your particular household is, as an individual, is going to take a great deal of wattage. But when you multiply it, your house times the man who lives next door and the people who live down the street and the others across town, you get a very high wattage use. And at the present time, Chugach Electric is not able to turn out all of the power that is required to operate the city of Anchorage under normal conditions. If you use more than is absolutely necessary, there's a great possibility that we will all be back in the dark again, using candles, flashlights, the other means that we had of lighting our facilities during the first few hours after the quake. So don't use them, huh? But if you do need power and you don't have it so far, call Broadway 50005. Warrant Officer Elkhart at Elmendorf is trying to locate Mr. Dumford with the GSA motor pool, or anybody connected with the motor pool, and he's asked to contact Skyline 24121. Skyline 24121. Now, getting back to Bob Oldland's story as he tells it. As you know, the quake hit. Bob and his family were at their home, and he grabbed the baby, Cynthia, who's 3 years old, and he put it under him. Everybody got down on the floor, and they started to ride it out. The fireplace crumbled up. Naturally, things were toppled over, and the place was a mess. Right after the quake, Bob says he made sure that his family was okay. Then he went down to Civil Defense Headquarters, where he went to work. And he's been there ever since, except for 6 hours of sleep that he had last night. And I know how those 6 hours kind of affected everybody. Those were the best 6 that we've had in the past 48, I think. He, up until now, has been coordinating the basic utility restoration, search and rescue operations, and the damage assessment operations for Anchorage. And he anticipates that most city operations will be fully restored with permanent equipment within the next few months, or during the May-September construction season, which means they're going to have a lot of construction going on. And as Bob puts it, it's a heck of a way to have to build a city. But it's my greatest professional challenge, he says. Alaskans are used to adversity, according to Bob, and this is very true. And he says they'll just take this in stride, just as they do with all of their other problems. There was a great psychiatrist once who was asked, what causes the difference between man and animal? And his reply was rather unusual, and it might fit the circumstance. He said the difference is that in time of challenge, man will meet the problem and, if possible, conquer it. Whereas animal, if it is not within his realm of the senses, will ignore it. We're faced in Anchorage with a very severe crisis and a very desperate challenge.
You have the item on Attorney General George Hayes. He's been contacted by the Civil Defense. We can
Good.
go with that one.
I believe I put it up in the file there.
Here's a list of names that the people in Ketchikan are very concerned about.
By the way, in case somebody wonders how we get this information, our wires now are operating through
Right.
Associated Press throughout Alaska.
These people are very concerned in Ketchikan about the names that we have on this list. And if the people who are on this list are listening, contact KFQD. We'll make every attempt we can to let the folks in Ketchikan know your condition. Now, here's a list of names of those who are wanted, the condition of the people who are wanted in Ketchikan. Lee Huckleberry, Beatrice Mills, Robert Schaefer, Carl Burgess, R.C. Daly, A.K. Wagner, Irving Edwards in the Seward area, Earl Wint, I guess that is, might be Winter, W-I-N-T-E, maybe you dropped a letter. Juanita Lefevre, Mrs. Victor Nelson, Brew Bird, Rodney Baker of Kodiak, Rodney Bird, Jerry Helliwell, Charlie Stansel, and Bill Whipple. These are the immediate families, the relatives of these folks in Ketchikan inquiring about their condition. If you can let us know, anyone on this list, we'll be glad to try to relay the message. And Dave and Andrea West at Fairbanks want to know of Ed Hansen and his family. He's with Anbank. Beth Murray of Fairbanks wants to know of daughter Barbara and Earl Miller. The address is unknown. And persons in Fairbanks having appointments with doctors wish to know if they should stay in Fairbanks. I think at this time that probably would be advisable that they do so, but we don't have the official word. We'll try to get official word on that also. You're listening to KFQD in Anchorage, Alaska, your official civil defense base station here in Anchorage. It's 17 minutes past the hour of 12 o'clock noon. And we'll continue operating for 24 hours a day to bring you all the latest news and information concerning...
Where are you going, Alan?
Tragedy.
Alan, if you'd sit on the chair instead of kneeling on it, it wouldn't roll out from under you.
I'm tired of kneeling, sitting, I should say. I decided to kneel on the chair that's got casters on it, and I knew...
If this were television, you and I would be out of business immediately. You know that, don't you?
The next room.
We have some, this is very urgent from, thank you very much. This is urgent. It goes to Tom Ausdale, call EKCMO in Cordova, GA 43253, to send all inland charts for Cook Inlet to home by way of Cordova Airlines. Tom Ausdale, call EKCMO in Cordova. That's GA 43253. Send all inland charts for Cook Inlet to home by way of Cordova Airlines. This also is urgent. John Norby, call Mr. Randall at his home or Alaska Railroad. John Norby, call Mr. Randall at his home or Alaska Railroad. 20 minutes past 12, and in just 10 minutes, the American Legion post at 808 Fireweed Lane will begin giving the typhoid inoculation shots. I do so hope you are making preparations at this moment to be one of those who will have your shots today. It is the simplest of simple inoculations. The nurse will simply take a very small needle and insert it just under the skin on your forearm. They then insert a small amount of the serum. It will raise a slight bump on the arm, and possibly later on it will become itchy. It will turn a little red. There is no pain, however, involved, none whatsoever. And except for the smallest of babies, every man, woman, and child in the city of Anchorage today should have their shot. We have a few personal items. Oh, thank you.
That's Slumber J.
All right. Slumber J. Everyone at Slumber J, well, survivors, their families are okay. This comes from Frank Saunders at Slumber J. Claudia Socks in Seldovia. Everything is okay. That's from Mother. John Bickerstaff. Call Federal 32135. The Sad Shack is open on the Seward Highway. That's under general information, and we have other organizations that are open for business. We'll go through that list in just a short period of time. To Art and June Kohler, Mom and Dad are fine. This is from Bob Rachel. People in Cohoe, Canoe. Oh, that's it. I'm sicker than I thought. People in Cohoe and Castleth, Ruby and Kaya are all right, and this is from Ruby McGurgle. Ralph Brown, or B.J. Brown, call John at Fairfax 21662. Marge Beverson, call Skyline 26259. Frank Dugan at Juneau. Betty Chooch and Ann are all fine. This comes from Betty Daniels.
A couple more inquiries from the outside about people in Anchorage from Juneau residents. The Severson family wants to know about Chester Lovis and his family. Warren Powers wants to know about Buddy Richards in Mountain View. Barbara Thompson of Igloo, South Dakota, asks that someone in Anchorage inquire about her parents and report to the police Captain Parker. Hill Mathis in Juneau wants to know about Sigrid Mathis and their daughter, who is 9 years old. Appreciate anything that you might be able to do. She lives at 1429 G Street. Or perhaps I should read 1420 G Street. If anybody knows of their whereabouts, their condition, please call KFQD. We'll try to pass this information on. Right now we have KFQD's news director standing by, who has been out in the field covering this story since it started. And Herb would like to come in now with a few more words. Herb Shaindlin.
Thank you, Alan. I know that there is, on the part of our community and its residents, a large amount of concern in many cases for the worrying that may be being done by relatives in the South 48 and back at home. And I'd like to remind the people in our community that, at least insofar as we are concerned, we have been in touch with the CBS network for a long time. Our first report went to CBS network a short time after the quake, and we have tried to accurately describe the situation here in Anchorage, but we have tried also to inform the citizens in the South 48 who are obviously and very definitely concerned for our welfare of the fact that, comparatively speaking, we are in excellent shape, certainly from the point of view of the life lost situation. The toll might have been much greater than it was, and we have much to be thankful for. In my reports to the CBS network, I've tried to indicate that in the main, certainly the vast, huge majority of the citizens of Anchorage have come through this tremendous natural phenomenon unscathed.
Herb, if you'll excuse me, we have a very urgent announcement we must get on. This goes to Mr. Sam Potter, of the downtown Rexall. Please bring your keys to Jack Henry Post number 1 at 808 Fireweed. This comes from Dr. Rayburn, who needs serum as soon as possible. So Mr. Sam Potter of the downtown Rexall, please bring your keys to the Jack Henry Post at 808 Fireweed so that we can get in there and get some serum. Tech Sergeant Lauren Pogue, contact your work section as soon as possible. Thank you, Herb.
Thank you very much, Bob. Incidentally, very shortly we will be running a tape recording of the press conference which was held by Mr. Ed McDermott, who represents President Lyndon Johnson here in Anchorage. Mr. McDermott, of course, is the director of the Office of Emergency Planning. And last evening, we attended a news conference along with newsmen from the major media throughout the country. That conference was recorded exclusively by KFQD radio, and through the medium of magnetic tape, you will be able to attend that news conference in just a little while. As soon as the men who have been with you throughout the day, throughout the past few days, Bob Lake and Alan in particular, in this particular case, feel that the scheduling permits, we will play for your benefit the tape recording of that news conference. Also present at the conference were Governor Egan, Senator Ernest Greening, Senator Bob Bartlett, and General Reeves, the Commander-in-Chief of the Alaskan Forces. These gentlemen will all be heard on the tape recording, which you will hear shortly. We will go back to the field now to continue keeping you informed of developments in and around Anchorage and the 49th state. We remind you that this is our job. Our personnel are hard at work. They are carefully trained to perform their duties. And if you sit at home and listen to your radio, you will be as well informed, possibly better, than if you attempt to see for yourself. The authorities continue to maintain their guard throughout the streets and insist that you do not get into your automobiles for the purpose of sightseeing. There may well be an arrest if you do. Please cooperate as you have been doing, and as you will hear Mr. McDermott indicate, by the way, the cooperation and the spirit of Alaskans is something outsiders apparently find somewhat amazing. Keep up the good work. We'll try to do the same thing on this end. Bob, thank you.
Herb, thank you. I found your statement regarding people who are working long hours quite amusing coming from you. When was the last time you slept, Herb? Or have you?
No, I haven't. It was 8 o'clock Friday morning I got up, and I haven't gotten down since. I'm looking forward to it, though, Bob. When it finally comes, it's going to be a pleasure. However, Bob, there are police officers. You mentioned Captain Parker a little while ago. I think he's got my record beat, and he's not alone. There are most of the utility people, the police, the firemen. These people are the people who have real credit coming because they are doing 8, 10, 15, 16 things at the same time. I've been up a long time, but, Bob, I haven't been lonesome.
No, and you haven't been idle either, Herb. Thank you very much. A man that is really putting in a great deal of effort. We all appreciate it everywhere. We have a message in answer to a broadcast that we made here just a few moments ago about one of the people. We're getting calls from Ketchikan, from Juneau, from Fairbanks, from various areas around the state, We're also getting some contact from the lower 48, people asking for information on people living here in the Anchorage area in answer to one of our broadcasts. And rather than take the time to look up where it came from, I'll just mention it. Robert Schaefer is in good condition, and he's going back to Fairbanks. All right. Yes, out of this one. Good. We will have the broadcast that Herb mentioned a few moments ago in just a few moments. I think this would be an appropriate time for it since in listening to it last night, I found it extremely interesting, and I'm sure you will too. I'd like to welcome to our rather crowded conditions here at the KFQD control point, which, as you know, is Civil Defense Base Station during this operation. A man whose voice is quite familiar to you.
First time I ever did a program piggyback.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Great.
Is that?
Great.
Ah, big duck. When are you going to shave? I mean, the mustache. I noticed you got pretty close with the rest of it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know yet.
This is Merrill Mael.
Thank you.
And I don't know why Mother called you that. It's always, it's been the most difficult name I've ever found to pronounce rapidly.
Yeah,
and get it
too.
right. Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you have that trouble?
Mo.
Mo, is that what it comes?
Mo. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's good enough.
Do you want to do some of these instead of sitting there puffing on that pipe that you smoke with the venomous fumes coming from it? We have a report here. Alaska Airlines flight from Seattle is arriving at 3:45 and departing at 5:15. Alaska Airlines flight from Seattle, 3:45. Arrival time, departure 5:15 today.
Well, if they aren't ready with their program.
Well, I want to do just a couple of these because they're important. Like, for instance, that one, if you will.
Right, okay. This is urgent. To Mr. Sam Potter of the downtown Rexall store, please bring your keys to Jack Henry Post, number 1, 808 Fireweed Lane. Dr. Rayburn needs the serum. He needs the keys to the downtown Rexall store. So, Sam Potter, if you could bring the keys to the Jack Henry Post, number 1. That'll be the first order of business right now, because Dr. Rayburn needs the serum. The inoculation start very shortly. Warrant Officer Eckelhard of Elmendorf is trying to locate Mr. Dunford with the GSA motor pool or anybody connected with the motor pool on Elmendorf. Call Skyline 24121. Skyline 24121. Here's an urgent message for Tom Ousdale. Tom Ousdale of last seen, called ECMO in Colorado, EKCMO. At the GA, that's prefix, GA 43253, to send all inland charts for Cook Inlet to Homer via Cordova Airlines. All inland charts for Cook Inlet to Homer via what? Via Cordova Airlines. Mm-hmm. Okay, John Norby is to call Mr. Randall at his home or Alaska Railroad. John Norby, that's an urgent message for John. Technical Sergeant Lauren Pogue, contact your work section. ASAP.
As soon as possible.
ASAP.
Right. That's our abbreviation for right now.
Yeah. If not sooner.
Yeah.
Gas Electric has one phone line for trouble calls. If no power, call this number. But only if no power. Broadway 50005.
And also a reminder that power is something we're going to have to conserve on today and maybe for some time to come. So if you have lights burning in your house or utilities operating that you just don't need to sustain life, then by all means, turn them off and conserve on all the power you can.
Right, because I don't know how they got it back on anyway.
I don't either. It's amazing the things they have done in the past
with
couple of
all
days.
those circuits out, with all the everything that's out, it's impossible.
All right, in just one moment now, after one more message, we're going to have our broadcast. If the boys are ready in the next studio, we'll have our broadcast, which is a rebroadcast actually from last night, and I'm sure you'll find it of very great import. Mrs. Thornton at Broadway 83842 has several messages from the lower 48 for the following people. R.R. Robinson, director of BLM in Anchorage. The Red Cross field director at Elmendorf. For Glenn King, Lois Sugat. Is that
Sugat?
Sugat, okay. R. Isness, Earl P. Ellis, Danny Olson, Stanley M. Rothrop, John Morgan, George and Laura Wendell, and the Eckberg family, and Helen Vick. The number, once again, is Broadway 83842. We'll repeat all of these names and the number a little bit later on, just in case some of you missed it. This goes to Jack Randall and Borough Assembly. The Assembly meeting, April 4th, is deferred till further notice. I am coordinating supply for the Kenai Peninsula, except for Seward. It's signed Harold Pomeroy, Chairman of the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Right now it's 25 minutes until 1 o'clock this Easter Sunday in Anchorage, Alaska. This is KFQD, 730 on your radio dial. We are broadcasting with 10,000 watts of power being received in Juneau, and we understand that it is being relayed into the lower 48. I don't know exactly which stations are receiving us, or even which station in Juneau is picking us up. But we thank them all very much. Your cooperation is certainly most welcome at this time. And now, ladies and gentlemen, a rebroadcast that is of vital importance. And to introduce it, here's KFQD's news director, Herb Shaindlin.
Is a rebroadcast of a tape recording made at a press conference held last evening by Mr. Ed McDermott. Mr. McDermott is the director of the Office of Emergency Planning in the nation's capital, and he was sent to Anchorage by President Lyndon Johnson to assess the situation here. His job concerns the aid that Anchorage and Alaska will be receiving from the federal government. And Mr. McDermott obviously wasted no time. Almost moments after stepping off the plane, he had the entire briefing in hand. And he gave the information to newsmen with very, very little except hard fact. At the conference were newsmen from the major networks, television, radio, newspapers, and magazines throughout the country. Attending were Governor William Egan, Senator Bartlett, Senator Greening, and General Reeves, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces in Alaska. To introduce himself, Mr. Ed McDermott.
Gentlemen, I am Ed McDermott, Director of the Office of Emergency Planning at the White House in Washington, and have been sent here expressly by President Johnson as his representative to survey and determine the nature and extent of the damage to the communities of the state of Alaska affected by the earthquake that struck here last night. As you know, we arrived this evening by Air Force jet, and traveling with me in the party are the two distinguished senators from Alaska, Senator Greening and Senator Bartlett, who have been following this matter very closely and with deep personal concern since shortly after midnight in Washington last night. Both of these gentlemen, like others of us, have been up practically all night trying to get as much information as we could before we departed on this mission. I might say, too, that President Johnson is very deeply interested and concerned with this situation. I've had several conversations with him today before I left Washington, and also en route on the plane. Now, for the benefit of the press that came up with us on the plane, I can give you some information that has been... Governor Egan has just entered the room. The governor has been with us at a briefing that has just been concluded. I have met with, and the senators and I have met with Governor Egan and other state and local officials, at which time we have endeavored to pull together as much general information as we can with reference to the situation as it exists. General Reeves has been very, very helpful and has been, of course, a source of much of the information that has been available to us up to the present time. The best information that we have at this moment indicates that as a direct result of the earthquake, in the several cities and communities involved, there are 35 confirmed dead and 12 missing, and a number of casualties in varying degrees. It should be emphasized at this point that the exact nature and extent of the fatalities and casualties cannot be determined at this time, and it is expected that this figure will change somewhat. I'm informed that this earthquake struck the Anchorage area at about 5:36 p.m. Alaska Standard Time last evening. It was snowing slightly at that time, and the onset of the quake was nearly instantaneous, with very little or no advance warning. I have talked with people who were riding in automobiles, including the mayor of Anchorage at the time the quake hit, and he described the action as he experienced it and saw or felt or heard no advance warning of its onset. I talked to others who were in their homes or other structures at the time the quake hit, and they also had no advance warning. The quake was in the nature of a violent rolling action with a rolling motion proceeding from generally easterly to westerly, and it lasted between 5 and 6 minutes in duration. During the course of this violent rolling action, all utility services in the Anchorage area, except water, went out. I would like now to go through a city-by-city general description of the situation as it exists this evening. In the city of Anchorage, we have 12 confirmed dead, an estimate of 60 to 70 injured, and 2 people reported missing. The Anchorage area has received very considerable damage, with the business district and parts of the Turn-Again residential area being very severely damaged. It has been confirmed that approximately 75 houses in the Turn-Again residential area have been destroyed. There may be additional casualties or fatalities in that area. The debris and the area of that damage is still under survey. At the Anchorage International Airport, the tower was knocked down. There was 1 fatality that is included in the 12 known fatalities in Anchorage. That fatality occurred when the tower fell. There's also damage to the terminal building. A portable tower is being flown into the Anchorage International Airport and is expected to be here and in service tomorrow. The International Airport is now able to receive jet traffic. Most of the major buildings in the downtown area are untenable, and some have partially collapsed. There is a 30-foot deep fissure which runs through 4th Avenue and fissures in other streets. There is a water problem of some severity in some of the areas of Anchorage, but the situation is well in hand. It's been apparent to me from what I've seen since I arrived that the city officials are doing a good job in handling the situation. There has been very little fire damage in the Anchorage area. An area approximately 12 blocks by 8 blocks has been blocked off in downtown Anchorage. This is the area of the principal damage in the commercial district. This area is under police control, and the police authorities are supported by local military personnel. There have been no reports of looting. The civil population of Anchorage has responded most admirably to the situation that has so suddenly confronted them. There has been no panic in the civil population. They have responded well to civil authority, and civil direction and control has been maintained at all times. There is extensive road damage throughout many areas of the state, and there is no rail or road transportation south out of Anchorage at this time. With reference to utilities, there is a broken gas main, and the gas utility service is out in Anchorage. Electric service is still out in about 50% of the city. The sewage system is damaged, and the sewage system is being surveyed at the present time. With reference to the village village of Seward, S-E-W-A-R-D. Civil defense authorities report that there are 8 fatalities in Seward. The city was hit by a tidal wave, and the docks and buildings in the city have been severely damaged. A shrimp and halibut processing plant, which is the principal economic activity in Seward, has been very seriously damaged. The fuel oil tanks in the city of Seward were on fire earlier this afternoon. The runway at the Seward Airport is usable for C-123 aircraft, and 150 troops have been moved to Seward by air late this afternoon to provide assistance. Destroyed bridges have prevented the movement of troops or other civil assistance to Seward by truck, as was initially attempted. We have an aircraft report from an aircraft over Seward that reported that all oil storage tanks in that area were either burning or burned out. We are also satisfied that the railroad yards at Seward have been demolished and that many houses in that area have been shaken off their foundations. In the community of Valdez, the waterfront was destroyed, including 2 docks, the breakwater, the boat harbor, and all fishing boats. This destruction resulted from the tidal wave. The business district in Valdez has been burned out. There are 3 confirmed dead at Valdez and 26 unaccounted for at the present time. All civilians in Valdez have been evacuated from that community to Gulkana, Glen Allen, that's Gulkana-Glenallen area, this afternoon, except for approximately 40 males which have been left in charge of the city. The principal reason for the evacuation is that there is no sewer or water or other utility services there. Approximately 200 Army troops from the Yukon Command are being moved to the Valdez area to man the relief stations and otherwise assist with the care of the evacuated personnel. In the small community of Whittier, W-H-I-T-T-I-E-R, which has a population of about 28 people, civil defense authorities report that there is 1 confirmed fatality and 12 missing, so that 13 of the 28 people are either dead or missing. 15 of the total population are known to have survived. The railroad terminal in Whittier has been demolished. We have had no contact with Whittier, direct contact, since the earthquake, except a contact that gave the information that I have just given to you on the fatalities and casualties. The Coast Guard has submitted an unconfirmed report that the oil tanks in Whittier are burning and the docks have been destroyed, but that the building damage does not seem to be as great as in some other communities. Poor weather has prevented military aircraft from making a reconnaissance of Whittier during the morning or early afternoon of today. In the town of Kodiak, on Kodiak Island, reports indicate that there are approximately 350 persons homeless and there are 11 confirmed fatalities. The city officials are assessing the damage, which appears to be very severe. Low-lying houses and several canneries in the town of Kodiak have been destroyed. The commander of the Alaskan Sea Frontier is using all available boats to assist in evacuating survivors. The evacuation of some civilians to Seattle is a possibility, and 250 Seabees are being sent to Kodiak by the commander of the Pacific Fleet, and they will come from the West Coast. At Cordova, our information is still very limited. There have been no direct communications from the town. The airport, however, reports very bad damage in the town of Cordova. We are in contact with the FAA facility at the Cordova Airport. but the airport is separated from the city. We are not in contact with the city. The information, therefore, is very sketchy from that community. Now, in addition to these specific communities that I have mentioned, there are, of course, a large number of outlying villages and coastal villages which have not yet been surveyed and from which reports have not yet been received. There are an unknown number of communities, but undoubtedly 8 or 10 or more that have suffered damage in varying degrees and may have either casualties or fatalities. It will take some additional time before we can have a complete report from all of those communities. I might say again that the military authority in the state of Alaska and the civil authority, the governor and state personnel, the city officials and municipal personnel of Anchorage, which is the only city we have visited so far, have done an outstanding job of responding to this disaster. There has been excellent cooperation between the military and the civil authorities, and they have been working very closely hand in hand in an effort to, 1, accurately survey the damage, and 2, to initiate such alleviating procedures as are appropriate. I would say an additional word that the reason that I am here, as I said, is because President Johnson directed me to come here, and the reason that the senators from Alaska are here is because they, too, want to see firsthand what the damage is, and they have a vital interest also in seeing that the federal government response is as alert and as thorough and as efficient as it can be. President Johnson, in response to a request from Governor Egan, has declared the affected communities of Alaska a major disaster area under Public Law 81-875. Under the authority of that law, the Director of the Office of Emergency Planning, on behalf of the President, has the responsibility and authority to direct and coordinate all federal assistance. Federal assistance will be made available from a number of different federal departments and agencies. Those federal departments and agencies will be represented either by national office personnel that will be flown in here when we determine who is needed, or by regional or state personnel who are already here in the state of Alaska. The entire federal activity will be coordinated by a special disaster field office of the Office of Emergency Planning that has already been established, and which will be in the charge of my regional director, Mr. Creeth Tooley, who is in charge of our regional office at Everett, Washington, and other members of his staff, including Mr. Willman. Coming up with us on the plane today were representatives also of the Housing and Home Finance Agency and the Department of Interior. Others will be here as the need for their services is determined. I believe that completes the report that I had to make. General Reeves and Governor Egan and the senators are here, and the Civil Defense Director is here and available for any questions that anyone may wish to ask them. Governor, maybe you would like to say a word to the members of the press before they have any questions.
I might say it, Mr. McDermott, that you've done a marvelous job of giving the story of what's occurred here since the disaster struck Alaska yesterday evening. We're grateful, all Alaskans are grateful that you and Senator Bartlett, Senator Green, and others could be with us, that your concern was that great with the troubles that have been thrust upon us over these past 24 hours. I want you to, too, I would certainly want you to convey to President Johnson upon your return to Washington the gratitude of all Alaskans. That includes the military as well as the civilian population, because I don't think that anywhere in the United States is there a closer relationship between the military and the civil population as there is in Alaska. They are citizens of Alaska, and all of their activities always follow that thinking and take that vein. activities in Reeves, not only in this, who's Commander-in-Chief Alaska, not only in this particular time of trouble, but in all of his efforts in our behalf. We're also pleased and proud of all of the heads of other federal agencies that have been so helpful and so obviously and deeply concerned with our problems at this hour. I personally am very grateful of the tremendous cooperation and coordination that the military and the civilian population have had, particularly with regard to our civil defense organization and our state police, the city officials here in Anchorage, and in all of the other communities. The word we get from the other communities, scant as it is from most of them, is that the people in Cordova and Valdez and Seward and Kodiak and some of the villages that have been hit hard, the attitude of those people is to, despite any sorrow over the loss of loved ones and the economic loss that has come upon them so suddenly, the spirit and the eagerness that they have to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and clean up after this disaster and get their show back on the road again is something that not only we Alaskans are proud of, but I'm certain that all Americans can be very proud of indeed.
Very good. I'm sure that the senators will have a word. I would like to mention, however, at this time that we're well aware of the fine work that has been done by the American Red Cross here in Anchorage and in other...
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. I don't think Senator Greening would disagree with me when I say that we are here in the first place because we want to be, because we feel this is where we ought to be in this time of catastrophe. And we're here in the second place because we want to make a personal assessment of the situation, so that will aid us in making our contribution to that which is being done in Washington. I must say that dreadful though the loss of life has been, it is so much less than we thought it was when we left Washington. The report immediately before our departure being that 600 were dead in Anchorage alone. That there is a certain feeling of relief, although if only one life were lost, of course, that would be dreadful. On a personal basis, I too want to express appreciation to President Johnson for acting so quickly and having you, Mr. McDermott, come up here to take charge. And you're doing a first-class job, in my opinion. I cannot refrain either from joining Governor Egan in saluting the military cooperation. I had the first personal evidence of it at 3 o'clock this morning in Washington when General Reeves called me to make a report on what had occurred, and that provided a takeoff point for us for the rest of the day before our departure there. We intend to go back to Washington when we do return there, ready to lend all possible cooperation with Governor Egan and his state administration, and we know we're going to have the help and active help of Mr. McDermott and President Johnson.
Senator Green?
Yes, this has, of course, been a major disaster, by far the worst disaster that's ever struck Alaska. As earthquakes and their consequences go, this is tremendously widespread because you've had the double effect of the earthquake shock and of the tidal waves. And it's affected the area of Alaska of the highest concentration of population, extending from, not merely from Kodiak to Cordova, but we still do not know how serious the damage has been in the villages along the peninsula. down the so-called chain, which undoubtedly have suffered very serious damage. And while I share Senator Bartlett's relief that the casualties have not been as great as they were first reported, even so they've been very serious, and the damage to the community, the property damage, the economic damage is going to be very far-reaching. Of course, I join Bob Bartlett in expressing my great appreciation to the speed with which President Johnson got to action. The first word of this came to Washington about 11 o'clock, midnight, last night, and within an hour I had a telegram from President Johnson saying what he was doing and saying how he was mobilizing all the relief agencies and all the forces. We're very grateful to you, Mr. McDermott, for organizing this thing so rapidly and so effectively. And there's a great deal that needs to be done. I think it'll be a long time before we can assess the full consequences of this. And as Bob Bartlett said, we came here not only because we felt this was where we wanted to be, but because we've got to work hard, in addition to the things that are supplied automatically by the law, and see what other help and relief we can get out of the Congress. Because this is a devastating economic blow to Alaska, not merely to personal property and business damage, a serious blow to the treasury of the state. Income of the state will be very seriously affected. And those who know the past history of Alaska realize how disadvantaged we were after being a colony for 92 years. We're just starting to move ahead as a state. This is really very crippling. And we all want to work together to see whether we can repair just as much damage as rapidly as possible and get the state moving forward again. And I want to join also in expressing my thanks to General Reeves and the military, the Red Cross, and all the other agencies and to Mayor Chirac, who has, of course, been indefatigable ever since this happened.
Thank you very much. Now, do the members of the press have any questions that they would like to ask?
Mr. McDermott, have you, the authorities of Alaska, arrived at a preliminary damage estimate in millions of dollars?
No, we have not gone into that question in our discussion so far. Our initial effort was to try and tie down some reliable information on the extent of fatalities and casualties. We know from what we have heard that the property damage is very, very great. Perhaps the governor, who has been surveying the situation all day, would have some ballpark estimate of total property damage.
It would be a ballpark estimate, all right, Mr. McDermott. I think that when you drive around Anchorage or when you fly around in a helicopter, it's a very good way to see just what has happened here in this area, that you'll see that it will take some days by people who are really good at assessing to really come up with any kind of a firm figure. But I was from the villages or in the Kodiak area where we have this heavy fishing industry where their big plants were evidently wiped out. The damages at Valdez Cordova Seward is a very that will run into heavy damage at Whittier, and all of these. When all of these things are in, I think that it is very likely that the total dollar damage will not be less than $250 million.